All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our February regular business meeting of the Amherst School Board. We will get started at 6 o'clock tonight. Shoot, it's 6:01 rather, not 6 o'clock. Sorry, Danae. We'll get started at 6:01 as the clock changes over as we call to order. First thing that we'll do is slightly out of order on the agenda, but we will keep it open for any questions that may come up after we do our math presentation. But we will open it up for public comment. If anybody wishes to speak here in person, you can come onto the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes. Obviously saying your name and your town of residence when you do. If you'd like to speak virtually on Zoom tonight, you can raise your virtual hand. We do have some folks listening tonight virtually. You can raise a virtual hand. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please turn your camera on. Make sure that your name is in your avatar, your icon. And then again, you'll have 3 minutes after you introduce yourself online. So with that, I will officially open it up for anybody that would wish to speak in person or remotely. Going once, going twice, and we are sold for now. So that will conclude our first public comment session. Oh, Marilyn Gibson got her hand in just in the nick of time. So Marilyn, if you'd like to turn on your camera, please, and then state your name when you're ready. I'll let you know when we're officially ready for it. We have to make sure we have the sound going. Yep, but when you are ready, Marilyn, you'll have 3 minutes. If you can turn your camera on, please. And we're actually going to put you as a panelist too. Stand by, Marilyn. We're going to move you over to panelist before you can speak. That is in the works now.
She declined the panelist move.
Okay, Marilyn, so you have to accept the panelist invitation. If you do not accept that, we can't get you to speak because you have to be in the panelist mode. So we'll try again to send you a panelist invite. If you'd like to speak, just accept it. And if you decline it, we will assume that it was a mistake by raising your hand. Nope. All right. Let me know when you're ready, Steve.
Yeah, ready.
If you turn on your camera, Marilyn, and then you will be good to go. You'll have 3 minutes once you do. Hold on, Marilyn, you're still connecting to audio. It appears you're connected.
All right. Thank you very much. Am I all set with you?
You're good. We got you.
All right. Thank you very much. I just want to comment that I appreciate all the information that we received from the Amherst School Board in regards to the Ways and Means Committee. There are still a lot of questions out there, especially from the citizens who I guess need to be directed to a specific site, which would be the Ways and Means website. And they don't get that information on Facebook. And I would appreciate it if somehow the Amherst School Board could send that out in a direct, whether it's email or however you do a broadcast. That would be greatly appreciated because all our documents are listed there and most of their questions could be answered through that.
Okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay. Good night. Have a good one.
You as well.
Thanks.
All right. So now we will close the public comment session, our first public comment session, barring any other hands raised. I don't see any. So with that, one of the board goals this year was to follow the progress of our new math curriculum in the first year of implementation. And so while Steve gets ready to share his screen here for the folks at home and in person here, I will introduce Assistant Superintendent Christine Landworld. This is the first year of this math program. It was piloted last year, and eventually, I believe, Christine, it was turned into an all grade level pilot as opposed to some of the grade levels that were testing this. They all eventually moved over to this program. So I will let you take it away.
Good. Thank you. This has been exciting work and really good work. So we're happy to share this with you. And certainly Kathleen and Kristen might jump in as well. For the next slide. So Bridges in Mathematics is our math program that we're using in kindergarten through 5th grade. It is a comprehensive program and really curriculum in and of itself. So the way it was designed to really fit every need and be comprehensive. So we don't need to be supplementing or pulling materials from other places. It is everything a teacher needs to be able to teach math. So some of the core beliefs of this program, it really supports a collaborative approach and really has students working together collaboratively and socially, because Bridges believes, as do we, in adopting this program, that students learn from each other and through that social interaction. And we have a little video in a bit to show you an example of that. The other core belief of Bridges is that learning is really about constructing meaning. So this is a constructivist approach, meaning that students need to learn mathematics through understanding it themselves and building their own meaning and their own sense of mathematics. And also the idea that learning requires perseverance. And this idea, which this is something we started exploring with Math in Focus. Math in Focus, you may remember, had many of these same core beliefs, but that learning requires perseverance and a willingness to experience disequilibrium, which is always tough for teachers. They never want to put a student in a position where they feel uncomfortable, but sometimes some of that best learning happens. So Bridges, it's that balance of putting students in situations where they're feeling safe and comfortable, but they're really stretching those comfortable limits, to use a Sauhegan phrase. With the work that we've done, I want to be clear that this was not an about face and a total change with the work that we have done previously with math. This was really enhancing and adding on to the work that we've already done. And really with this work, we're really trying to build problem solvers, not calculators. We all have a calculator in our pocket, in our hand, in most situations. And we really want students to deeply understand mathematics and to be able to solve problems. So what does that then look like in the classroom? So Bridges teachers, they're really looking to encourage students to be responsible for their own learning, which you're going to see an example of that in one of our quick videos. Students do a lot of cooperative work and really have to monitor their own learning during that time with teacher guidance and support, obviously. And that looks a little different in kindergarten versus what that looks like in 5th grade. A big part of this program is teachers using questioning strategies to bring student thinking to life and to really push student thinking. And those questioning strategies and that math discourse, that math discussion is a really important part of this program. And again, mentions that safe learning environment. If we're going to put students in a situation where they might feel a tiny bit uncomfortable because we're pushing their limits, we're really, getting them to justify and explain and to support their reasoning, we want to do that in a safe environment. And that Bridges program really supports teachers in building that classroom culture and that classroom environment, which again ties in with some of the other work we've previously done around our work study practices. So students really spend their time in math solving problems. We certainly have an aspect of this program around procedural fluency, but a good part of it is that problem solving. And it's problem solving using models and manipulatives, which again is part of the standards and our math practices. And it's not that that's all we do, but certainly when we're understanding a concept in the beginning, we really focus on using manipulatives and then transfer to using those models, and then eventually get to, say a standard algorithm for solving a problem. This program also supports students in testing conjectures and recording their thinking. And you're going to see that students recording their thinking in one of our videos. But the testing conjectures, so they might through one of the activities is a problem string or even an investigation that students might be doing that's part of the program. Students might be looking at, hey, what if this happened? Or how would you justify that? So that's a big part of the program. And students are really actively engaged in their learning. And you're going to see that in one of our videos, that there's a lot of talking and conversation, and it's all about mathematics. So Bridges is really, the goal of the Bridges program is really about building those mathematical thinkers. And one thing about this program is that it's tightly aligned to standards. So our challenge with Math in Focus was when we chose Math in Focus 11 years ago, it was really the best program at the time. but it was not tightly aligned to our state standards. At the time, it was actually aligned to international standards, which were higher than our state standards. And we thought that that would be a right fit and appropriate fit. And again, that decision was right before I arrived. I arrived right after Math in Focus was chosen. And it was the best program at the time, but a lot of new programs have come out that are more tightly aligned to standards. So because that had a benchmark of international standards, it was above and beyond our state standards, which is a great, it was great that there was the idea that we wanted to kind of reach a little farther ahead than where our state standards were, but it became challenging at times when students are assessed on their grade level expectations, but we were trying to teach students above those expectations. And we even found a number of years ago, and Kathleen and I worked closely together on this, our math coaches at the time were saying to us, students on the state assessment aren't getting these questions right, but because they did them last year and they didn't see them again this year. So that misalignment was really what pushed us to find a new resource. And again, in choosing Bridges, we didn't change our expectations around how we teach math or our philosophy. We really looked for a program that was tightly aligned to standards. And this program was evaluated by an external review organization, Ed Reports, and Ed Reports coded this all green, meaning tight and full alignment in all areas, which was really a key piece for us and something that we were looking for. And this program, again, is aligned to standards in that we teach the mathematical concept first. And then once students fully develop the understanding around why they're doing something, then we move into teaching the algorithm. And I want to be really clear that, when your student might come home and you might see that, hey, well, why didn't we just put, do long division and start dividing and subtracting and going through that process. The standards don't call for that yet. The standards don't call for a standard algorithm for addition until third grade, for subtraction in fourth grade, multiplication in fifth grade, and division in sixth grade. So we might think, oh, why are we holding this back? Research actually shows it's more beneficial to students for them to build their own learning, to understand the concept of why we do something in math. Then once that concept is fully developed, to then teach that standard algorithm. And there are times that the standard algorithm is more efficient and is faster, and we do teach that. But for example, 100 minus 99, the standard algorithm is not faster. Right in your head, you think, oh, it's 1. Well, if you actually wrote out 100 and the 99 and we're borrowing and carrying and subtracting, that would certainly take a lot longer. So I do want to be clear that we do get to that standard algorithm, but we do appropriately at the right time and align to the standards in doing so. So one of the key components of this program is something called problems and investigations. And this is really a whole group activity that students experience. And there are some independent and some partner work that happens during this time. It usually begins with a problem that the teacher shares, and it's usually a meaty, challenging problem. Time for students to work independently. And then they're able to talk in pairs and to solve together. And then they come together, compare strategies, and talk as a whole class. And some of this, the best thinking happens in listening to your peers talk. Well, I solved the problem this way. Oh, well, I used this strategy and it was really fast, or this was the most efficient way to solve that. And it really moves. So it's that structured investigation, and then it moves into a more teacher direct instruction. And this is very similar to how our Math in Focus program worked, where we start with a really challenging problem, get students to roll up their sleeves, think deeply, work in partners, share out, and then we go into that direct instruction. Another key component of the program is workplaces. Workplaces are really kind of like mathematical centers. And you'll see workplaces in just a minute, a quick video of that in action. And they're kind of a station or a center. It's where students might go with a partner, maybe with a group of students, and work on a set activity. And in the lower grades, workplaces happen every single day. So students are not sitting in seats for an hour receiving direct instruction during math. They start with those problems and investigations. They're going to get a little direct instruction and then go off into workplaces, and they're going to practice what they've been learning. And there's some student choice in workplaces. Workplaces, they're normally introduced by the teacher first. Sometimes they'll even practice as a whole class, and then students go off independently to work. I think I covered most of what's on the slide. for workplaces, I want you to see it in action. So this is Mrs. Lavoie's class up at the Mount Vernon Village School. I have one Mount Vernon example and one Clark Wilkins example. Volume.
On me.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Out there.
All right, all right, all right, all right. All right, so how are you gonna?
What is the answer? One. One space, all right. Hi.
Big difference.
Nice job, keep going.
What's that?
I think that's pretty much it. So hopefully that gave you a little bit.
Sorry, this goes back to you.
Yeah, thank you. A little sneak peek into what it actually looks like in the classroom for students. And one thing I did want to mention that I forgot to mention before, the workplaces time is really that time to be able to differentiate for students. So, a teacher could be pulling a group of students to the side to be reteaching a concept to them or to be supporting them in some way during that time. The other thing, and Kathleen and I chatted about this, she was supporting a teacher who said, hey, my student needs more of a challenge. What do we do? You can actually pull, if you're a first grade teacher, you can pull the workplaces from second grade and have the students working on those workplaces. And you choose the workplace for the same concept that just might be a little bit more challenging. And that is, something that you continuously do. So there's that flexibility in the program to be able to support those different learners. And a big piece of the program is that questioning and the teacher questioning that also supports that deeper thinking with students who might be ready to go above and beyond. So the next thing is Number Corner, and this is an important part of the program. One thing this is actually something similar to what we had before, but also different. So when we adopted Math in Focus years ago, we also adopted Calendar Math at the same time. And that Calendar Math wasn't integrated in our program. They were two separate programs. With Bridges, this calendar component is a critical piece of the program. You cannot adopt the Bridges math program without adopting the calendar portion of this too, called Number Corner. And you might think, oh, it's calendar math. Some of your deepest work is happening during this calendar time. And students are really gathered around a calendar, and there's a certain lesson that's being taught. And what's often happening is that you're being exposed to content early through calendar math in a really accessible way, and then you come back around to it. Something else in this program that is very different from Math in Focus and something that is really deeply supported by research is that these concepts continue to come back. So students might be introduced to something. It's not the only time they're ever going to see it. And there are certain times, and this was a shift for our teachers, you might be introduced to something, but you're not expected to master it. And then later on in the year, you get it again, and then that's when you're expected to master. So we've done a lot of work in supporting our teachers and really seeing that progression throughout the year and understanding when that mastery is expected to happen. So a few different pieces of Number Corner. You have your calendar grid and your calendar collector. You're actually collecting information. And this is the time really that computational fluency. So when we talk about being able to be really fast and fluent in mathematics, some of that happens here. And I mentioned problem strings, which is a type of problem that the teacher gives to students. And they really are spending a lot of time looking at data and about 30% of the standards that students will experience in the grade level is taught exclusively in Number Corner time, which is why it has to be part of the program. So the core program is 60 minutes. The calendar is another 20 minutes, right? Yeah. 20 minutes. So we're now going to get a sneak peek into Mrs. Snyder's class. She allowed Kathleen was our videographer and a little sneak peek at Number Corner. Yes. And she's second grade, right? And you saw first grade workplaces before. And
Which one?
she said, did she?
Gotta throw that in.
I,
Gotta throw that in. Gotta leave them wanting more right there. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Back to the presentation. So hopefully those videos gave you a sense of what it looks like in our math classroom. I did want to speak just briefly, just a little bit about our timeline and the work that we previously did to get to where we are now, and then a little bit about our curriculum, which is in the consent agenda tonight. So we started pre-COVID reviewing programs because we knew we had this challenge with our standards alignment. We had a math review committee that met a few times to really look at the programs that we had determined would be a best fit. Not a huge change in our philosophy, but tight alignment to standards. That committee reviewed 3 different programs, moved 2 programs forward for a pilot. We had teachers volunteer to pilot, and every single teacher at Clark Wilkins and at AMS, our 5th grade teachers, chose to pilot. And the way we designed our pilot, we didn't have one group of teachers pilot one program and another group pilot another program. Teachers get pretty deeply connected to the program they pilot, and they want that program. It's really hard to compare unless teachers experience both programs. So teachers piloted half a year of Bridges, half a year of illustrative math. We gathered feedback in multiple ways. We reviewed all of that feedback. And one of our challenges last year was that we were pretty split in the 2 programs. They were both very high quality programs, but we determined that Bridges was that best fit for us, really because it is comprehensive, where illustrative math allowed for kind of variation in the different models that may have been used, where Bridges says, when you're teaching this concept, here's the model you used. Where illustrative said, here, teach this concept, use whatever model you want. And really through our discussions, we felt strongly, and I know that's a simplified example, but through our discussions, we felt so strongly about equity of experience for our students that all students would have that common experience and have those high quality models that were outlined for them being used. And it doesn't matter whose math class you're in, you're going to have that similar experience. And one thing I wanted to highlight was that some of our teachers were a little disappointed that we went with a program that maybe didn't feel like the best fit for them. But Kathleen and I were so amazed just at the professionalism of the teachers. They may have been a little disappointed or frustrated when that decision was first made. And then they all rolled up their sleeves and they said, well, this is the program we're teaching. And they came to training like ready to learn. Training went really, really well this summer. I want to just highlight our Bridges trainers were actual classroom teachers that had taken time out of their summer to come to visit us to train our teachers to make sure that they had that real true, not someone who just knew math, but someone who was actually teaching that grade level math in another district. So that was a really nice piece. And then as far as implementation and support, won't go too deeply into this, but just wanted to highlight that programs don't really change teaching. It's that professional development and that support behind it that help to change practice. And again, a lot of this program similar to what we were doing before, but again, some little enhancements with the math discourse. There's more math discourse built into this program than there was previously. And again, there's a shift in some of the standards. So because standards were taught in different places with Math in Focus, that is a shift for our teachers. So first of all, we made sure that we purchased all necessary materials. There are supplemental materials that are optional, and we chose to make sure we purchased those so teachers had everything that they needed. We had those 2 full days of training. We also had 1 additional day of grade level work. And I can't tell you how many teachers thanked us for that day. They said, you treated us as professionals and you gave us time to work, to set the program up, to have the materials ready, to have our number corner That takes hours to put up your number corner materials. And every month you have to re-put those back up, change them monthly. So just to be, be given the time to work as a grade level, to unpack their materials and to feel that they were ready to hit the ground running was huge. And then we also worked to develop a scope and sequence for the first year that we thought was reasonable. And that scope and sequence is included in the curriculum. So that is this year's scope and sequence with the dates. And we've really been supporting teachers. And again, we don't want teachers to feel so lockstep. You're in trouble if you don't finish on this day. We want you to teach the students in front of you, but it's a good guidepost for where you probably should be, just to be able to make sure you're exposing students to all of those grade level standards. And then the math curriculum is in the consent agenda tonight. This is an updated curriculum reflected K-5, reflecting bridges. And you'll see that there's the scope and sequence document. There are the unit overviews for the core program. And then the last page of every grade level is just the scope and sequence for number corner. We haven't outlined number corner. It really, while it's an important component, the core program is what we have outlined in our curriculum, and just that scope and sequence for number corner. And the unit details are very similar to what we had for the other content areas, and we really tried to pull what we thought would be helpful both for a brand new teacher walking in as well as our community. So happy to answer questions. I think I went a little over my 15 minutes. I tried.
That's all right. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
So before I open it up to the board members in attendance, Terry Beam is remote tonight. Terry, I should have asked you beforehand. Can you just confirm that you could not be here tonight, or it was impractical for you to be here tonight, and that you are by yourself?
Yes, I am being Typhoid Mary at home and sparing you all. But I will
Thank
try
you.
not
Very
to cough
kind of
at
you to think about that, and hope that you feel better. So I will open it up to you first, Terry, if you'd like, in terms of questions, if you have any for Christine about the presentation or the math program. This way we can have you go with yours first and quote unquote get it out of the way before we open it up internally here.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. First off, I really appreciate having these. I've enjoyed having our curriculum sessions at each of these meetings and really getting a deeper look at what's been going on and the adjustments we've been making. I think that we sometimes get criticism that we're changing a lot. And I think that it can seem that way from the outside, but I think it would be, you're always trying to fine tune and get better. And the fact that we're trying to get, that we had the best program that we knew at the time when we started, and we realized that it wasn't giving us everything that we needed. I appreciate the fact that we took a thoughtful approach and really, thoughtfully decided what would better serve us going forward and rolled it out in a careful way. And it seems like it's already starting to pay off some dividends. So I'm grateful for the work that's gone into this, and thank you for explaining it so nicely. And whether we have kids live or on video, we always love seeing our students and being reminded about why we do what we do. So thank you for that. And I also appreciate the fact that you stress the fact that we're trying to educate thinkers and learners, and not just kids who are great at memorizing. I know that I was never fantastic at math because I don't memorize well, and so instead having a more holistic way to look at it in different ways to get there would have really resonated for me, I think, as a student. And I'm a little bit jealous that I didn't have that opportunity, and so I know that it can be challenging as a parent, because you're like, hey, this isn't the way I learned it. And so it's hard to do homework. But I think that for our students, we have to understand that as parents, it might be a little out of their comfort zone, but for our students, it really helps them just to have more flexible ways to get there. And I appreciate that about this program. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody here in person have any questions or comments for Christine? Victoria?
Yep, I have a couple, so we can I can just fire them off.
Go right
Okay.
through.
Can you explain where standards come from?
Yes.
Can I actually, Christine, I had a similar question on that. They're matching our state standards. I'm concerned that standards vary state to state. So how do they morph the program in terms of that as kind of a follow-up?
Mm-hmm. So you may have heard about Common Core state standards a number of years ago. That was an effort actually not by the federal government, but the chief state school officers, and, governors across the country to try to have similar standards. So especially when our military families and other families move from state to state, there are common expectations. So this program, they actually did an alignment to Common Core state standards. New Hampshire did take the Common Core state standards as a whole package and did adopt them as their state standards or our state standards. So this is fully aligned to the standards New Hampshire did adopt, which means it's fully aligned to any state assessment because our state assessment is also aligned to those standards. Now, their Bridges is adopted in, it's a great adoption map on the Bridges website for where it's adopted. They have done back alignments to states that don't have Common Core to help those states to see how it may or may not be aligned to their standards.
So to follow up with that one, if it's aligning to the state standards, does that make it seem like it would align to the state test?
Yes.
Okay, more in a way than what we were seeing in the last 5 years, where we've seen a difference in what the students are being taught at a certain time versus what they're being tested on through NEWA or SAS or whatever test we've been using.
Correct. And one thing I did want to mention, because this program is about building towards mastery and revisiting, intentional and purposeful revisiting of concepts, students are more likely to retain that information instead oh, I did their geometry unit in September and now I can't do geometry anymore. You're doing it every day in Number Corner. So the goal would be, even deeper retention for our students so that when they're getting to an assessment, that they're more likely to be able to, have mastery of those concepts.
Yep. Let's see. I was happy to see the calendars.
Mhm.
I think that being part of our curriculum that we post on our website is a fantastic link for parents. I know for parents of elementary school students, sometimes you can wonder what's coming next and how can I help my student?
Mhm.
That would be a great way, somewhere to direct or also something to have in hand to be able to hand out at conferences or open house or something so that people know what it is that's coming. Because, like somebody had mentioned, it is different. It's always different.
Mhm.
It's even our last program was a different way of thinking about math. So this is going to continue feeling different. So the more we can partner with parents, I think the better. And then my last question on this is, will there be some type of classroom assessments that you can come back to us with it later in the spring that says, here's how it worked this year? It doesn't need to be that every child understands every single thing, but just if there's something that we can say okay, this did work. And obviously there's going to be some things that don't work perfectly and we've tweaked them or we plan to tweak them in the future.
Yeah. And Kathleen and I and Kristen can really chat about, what's the best way to do that. And one thing we certainly can look at how students are achieving based on those classroom assessments, where they are in relation to the grade level standards, because all that information is in Empower. But we also want to look at, some teacher feedback and so on. So we can definitely gather, multiple data points from math and then be able to share again.
So first, just a statement. So overall, I think the philosophy and core beliefs align well with the math that they end up doing here as well. They may not be on the floor rolling dice, but they're on the boards with partners.
They're using craps tables for that, Josh.
I haven't heard that from my sophomore, but yeah. So I feel like it's a good, part of what we've talked about is helping to align K through 12, right? And I feel like this is better philosophically with what they do here in this building.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. And then my question was, I know that we've had professional development leading up to this. Is there a window into identify and fill in any challenges moving forward that teachers feel like there's a gap here or there, and how are we going to identify those and then potentially offer future professional development?
Yeah. We've already been talking about this summer and what support teachers might need this summer. We had a great conversation with fourth grade not too long ago during late start, and that's been a really great time for us to dedicate time for math and across all of our schools to have bringing Mount Vernon teachers down to Clark Wilkins to be able to collaborate and to share and to support. But we had a great conversation with fourth grade about the order of the units that they go in and when our natural breaks are in the school year, and would it make sense to swap units? And we talked to them about doing those units, then really reflecting on them, checking in with Bridges, getting some feedback from them. So we might be making little tweaks or changes like that. So we think we're going to probably need at least one summer day this summer to be able to get the feedback from the teachers and then to be making any tweaks or changes that we need to so teachers can really hit the ground running again next year.
So kind of, my questions are related to this and just kind of like a broader train of thought in general. Yeah, which might lead to questions, which I don't actually expect you to be able to answer at this moment in time. So, you know, obviously lots of new stuff, right? In terms of curriculum and instruction. And one part I'm concerned, one part I'm excited about. So I've made no secret about it. I'm not a big standardized test guy. So I do get concerned if we're just solely focused on making sure it's aligned to the standards, making sure it's aligned to the standards, if we are not really taking a deep look at the research that's underpinning those standards. And making sure that whoever has done that research is like a reliable source. So for example, this is going to be a reading example because that's more my realm. Like Fountas and Pinnell is a widely used reading system, but the research that was used to support Fountas and Pinnell was done by Fountas and Pinnell. And there's really only like one other report on whether their benchmark assessment system works, and it's not great, but a lot of districts and states adopted this very large program. And so I just want to make sure we're not following in to any of those traps, and that we're actually really looking at like the science. So like, for example, we talk about the research says that just like, do the educators have access to that research and look, you know, can they see it? And are we making sure that it's not done by Bridges and solely commissioned by Bridges? And then on top of that, what I would love to see, and this might already be happening, and the educators out there might get angry about this statement. And so, you know, we talk about instructional practices and making sure we're doing the best practices and the researched practices. I would love to see, when we talk about feedback and data, I would love to see action research done, you know, in the classroom. Like, hey, this educator tried this instructional strategy with the program. This educator with a similar group of students tried this instructional program, which yielded the best results, and how can we collaboratively move together so that we're all kind of chugging in the similar direction. And are we able as a board or as an SAU administration able to support them in that? Because that can kind of be scary for educators to be like, whoa, you want me to do what? This is but I just think it, you know, if we're really looking at doing the best things for the kids, which I think we all are, I think we all have the right intentions, like how can we support educators in doing that? And I guess just, I'm really big lately on just trying to make sure that when we say research, we know what the research looks like and everybody's on the same page looking at it. So just kind of like a comment, not that this, I'm not trying to like say like this is like a negative program. That I hope none of what I'm saying like it would be perceived that way. This is probably an amazing program. I'm not a big math guy. I can talk way more about the reading stuff.
But you know how far we've come, and we're having a conversation about the research associated with effective practice.
Right.
That is,
And that's your big bugaboo. That's what I love. Yeah. Right.
daily conversation in work now is, and maybe we're not there yet
Right.
to actually dig in and do our own, but we are talking about pedagogical choices that have research behind them. And so I think this is really a great evolution, that we're not there yet. And yes, we have some more work to do, but putting in the front of our brains that that public school educators and educators in general are a research-based entity, like engineering, like medicine, to me is what it's all about. It's elevating the profession, that this is not coming in, I feel like doing a word search.
Right.
Coming in and doing a practice that yes, and some of this is, I'd love to have side conversations about how we create a daily schedule in a teacher life where we are focused on the most important things and not all the other things that detract in our headwinds in our real life. But I so appreciate you as a board member bringing up, we were actually talking about research.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm happy to send some information to the board on the research side. We did a pretty deep review, and our math experts our math interventionists who are deep math experts, and the name of them hold a math specialist certification, which like, I don't know, 30 people in the whole state, I think hold. They've done deep, extensive professional development they were really, they were comfortable with the research and really the instructional strategies. And again, where we were teaching those concepts, because that was, a concern previously, but I'm happy to share some information. And Bridges is a tiny little publishing company, and I believe they're a not-for-profit publishing company as well. And they just care about getting the best information in teachers' hands, which is really, all about what that is what they do. So that does feel good for us too.
Yeah, and I would say one last thing is kind of like a little bit of the side. I do appreciate that at Wilkins, they had a math night, to kind of help families who are interested in attending. I was able to attend and see like, this is what it looks like and this is why we're doing it. So I think having those conversations is also very helpful and really appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, yes, our math night at Clark Wilkins, and we're going to be hosting one soon in Mount Vernon as well. But our math interventionist, Jen Eckelson and Amy Hansen, both hosted a math night. They did an incredible job. They worked really hard to pull their presentation together. They made videos and just really wanted to teach parents and explain about our program and why we teach mathematics the way that we do. So it was really successful.
Any other questions from you guys? The only question I had, Christine, was in terms of collaboration on this. I'm looking at the Bridges map that you mentioned, roughly 10 schools. It's not even districts. I don't know if they just have it with certain schools or not, but Manchester, Bow is one of them, Concord. They're using this program as well. How much have we done prior to implementing this in terms of talking with them, gauging their thoughts on it, and how much do we have the intention of doing it going down the road?
Yeah,
We connected,
with Bo last year.
Bow School District last, we met, we did
Bo?
a Zoom call.
Okay.
I have a few connections in that little play. And, so yes, sharing professional practice, how we've adapted it, how they're a year ahead of us in implementation. So that was a part of our review process and digging in process. And our teachers have reached, our math specialists have reached out to other schools as well. We're trying to create a network and share professional practice.
Yes, we connected with Northampton as well, and actually Newmarket. Newmarket came to visit the Mount Vernon Village School and to meet with Charlene. Patty Wands, who you might remember was an assistant principal at AMS a number of years ago. She's now the curriculum director in Newmarket. So as soon as she got the job, she said, "Wait, we have Bridges. I need to reach out to Christine." So we've been collaborating, and she actually sent a group of about 5 teachers, and she's been really excited about that collaboration. So we definitely have been reaching out, and it's something we really need to continue to do. One thing I wanted to say, there's Bridges Facebook groups, and it has been a game changer for our teachers. They absolutely love them, and they found some great resources and ideas. So that larger network has been very critical for our teachers. They've really appreciated it. And what was interesting is, there were some districts, their teachers sharing, my principal just dropped boxes off. It's the second week of school, and they now want me to implement Bridges. And I think our teachers recognized, just that thoughtful process and the support that they received, and that it's not always like that in every district. So it was really nice for them to really see just that wider picture, but then to help colleagues who get boxes dropped off in their classroom the second week of school. Obviously, other districts, probably other states as well. Just that national view, I think was really eye-opening for our teachers and helpful.
Okay. Terry, anything further from you?
No, I'm good, but thanks.
All right. So with that, I will open it up for just another quick public comment session. And it was originally scheduled for after that session. So we have a few more folks that are here. I will at least open it up again. We already have somebody coming to the mic. So when you're ready, Miss Eastland, please say your name and your town of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Underneath.
Oh, we never turn it on in the bottom. We'll fire somebody for that.
Please.
Josh Brady. All right. Thanks. Okay. Okay. So I have a number of comments. Lisa Eastland, 19 River Road, Amherst. One, some of the aspects of when I've been a sub in the classroom of Bridges, I love. And I will say the game that we saw in the Mount Vernon in the first grade, where there was the frog leapfrogging on the number line, I taught them that game, and the glee with those children had when they beat me, slightly hurtful. Like they, but it's great. And they're playing, but I can see that they're learning and they're understanding all of that. Number corner, 5th grade. And I think it was amazing. The numbers of ways kids came up with to solve a standard problem was so beneficial because kids are learning there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. Like that part, kids be like, oh, well, I did it this way. I did it that way. And other kids are like, oh, well, now I'm understanding I can do things. And they're a little more agile than I remember ever being in 5th grade. But that does bring me to, is there a way within the Bridges program that we can bring back some of kind of that old school memorization? Because what I have also seen in classes is because kids aren't memorizing multiplication facts, for example, their working memory is being taken up by trying to figure out what 6 times 7 is in their head instead of just knowing 6 times 7 is 42. So that's a fact they just know. And while they're learning the concepts of why 6 times 7 is 42 and what does that look like, can also happen. But what I'm seeing is a lot of working memory is being used that necessarily doesn't have to be. So that was kind of one of my first questions about that program is there some flexibility within the program to kind of do some of that just standard memorization? I had
1 minute left, Lisa.
Oh my God. Oh my
Thank
God. Okay. So, I'll skip the thing about testing and math and focus. I think Jason hit it. What I'm seeing with Bridges, what you explained, and maybe I misunderstood, was that it's kind of a layered approach, like Sauhegan. You even mentioned, like, is this the same philosophy? However, for years at Sauhegan school board meetings, there has been a critique about how Sauhegan is teaching math curriculum, and that maybe that's why kids aren't testing well, because they've had geometry and they haven't had it again. And it's that kind of layered re-attack approach that I haven't seen produce great results in test scores at Sauhegan. And the fact that it's been a topic of conversation at Sauhegan for at least 8 years, I'm wondering if this is how this is going to transition. And if we're kind of worried just about test scores, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on that, Christine? If you had a comment, if you didn't, that's fine. I just cut movement out of the corner of my eye.
Just regarding how this translates up, and one of the reasons for we're digging in. At the last Sauhegan board meeting, we had an hour on the math program. I think there's a lot of factors that go into including instruction, including pedagogical, but also instructional time. So we're trying to figure it out and trying to discern, because the research shows the revisiting and the spiraling, the reinforcement has longer term constructivist connections of learning versus short term. But there are some things.
Kathleen, is the bottom button on?
Pressure. I see nervousness.
Sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to also share that we do explicitly teach math facts as well. So in combination with this program, particularly when we hit 3rd grade, when students are at that place where we're feeling like they're ready to acquire those math facts and have sustained practice, that's something that we have all students engage in. We work with families on developing that computational fluency and expectation for the acquisition of facts. Some students, acquire those facts really quickly. Other students need more time practicing those skills, right? So, but that is definitely still a component of our instruction beginning in that 3rd grade level after the foundations of multiplication have been taught to students too. So it is not absent from the mathematical approach for 3rd grade teachers still there.
Thank you. Greg?
Hey guys, Greg Fritz, Amherst. Thanks for the presentation. It's nice. I recall this is planned to be a 5-year curriculum, and I just want to ask you, like, what conditions do we start thinking about either like renewing the curriculum or what we do or don't like about it, just to kind of plan ahead? Because I know we're in year 1, but just trying to think. I think we talked about before, like year 3, you thought maybe we'd see some measurable improvements, and I just kind of wanted to know what your future timeline looks like and how you evaluate this program and when we need to make decisions about future curriculum. Thanks.
If you'd like to, yeah.
Most the average life of a textbook is typically about 6 years, but with this program, it's we're buying consumable texts each year. So what we're actually purchasing are the classroom kits, which is a really nice piece, because if there are upgrades or changes, we can often just purchase new teacher manuals, and then those workbooks are an ongoing cost. So we're really going to be looking at implementation every single year, talking to teachers about how things went, what adjustments or changes do we need to make, looking at our assessment results. That's certainly one piece of it. And one really nice thing about this program, we have teachers scoring the unit assessments that they do in spreadsheets, and really looking at that data as a whole. How did students, what areas were they struggling on? Where were some of their strengths? And really evaluating it that way is a pretty easy thing to do with this program, which is one really nice piece. All along, we're going to continue to evaluate. Typically, a typical curriculum review cycle is about every 5 years, and that's just standard, but that doesn't mean we would sit each year or keep something that's not working. And again, if a new revision to this program comes out, we would want to evaluate and determine whether or not we would want to move to that new edition or that new version.
And Christy and I've talked about, it's going to take a while only because we're teaching it. Fifth graders are jumping in the first year of a program. We'll see the full, high leverage return on this time after kindergarten all the way through. So for me, I look at these, we'll certainly look, but it's 10-year decisions, not 5-year, 10 to see, because I don't want to jump. The other piece is that I really appreciate the board and AEA negotiating an increase of 4 days for new staff. So you saw the intense training for current. We won't mimic it all because we have more in-house, but we're going to have additional time for efficacy to this program. It isn't like you buy and then you train, when you get a chance during prep time, that we will have specific and deliberate training for efficacy of the program, which is, I think, the next level on how we adopt and implement and monitor. So that is important in this contract to pass, so we can have more time for new staff to engage in our embedded core programs, responsive classroom, our teacher effectiveness program, and Bridges mathematics, and also literacy stuff. I'm more the math side, but I got a chance to watch Kathleen twice do some literacy stuff, for new staff. So it all goes together.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
It'll come. There we go. Lisa Eastland, Amherst. So I do just want to throw a shout out to the kind of K-8 math teachers. I talk to these little kids sometimes, and the way they are able to function and do math in their heads at the 2nd grade level, the youngest level. And I just look at them and go, we were just dumb as stumps when we were your age, because we were not able to do any of that. So kudos to the teachers for managing different curriculums and trying new things and all of that, because whether it's showing up in test scores or not, in practice, seeing what kids can do in mental math is far beyond what most of us could have done at the same age. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we will move on to our next agenda item for tonight, taking a look at the consent agenda. I will take a motion to pass the consent agenda as is.
I'll make that motion.
And before I do that, Victoria, I'm actually going to, you said 4? Okay, we're actually going to revise this to pull item number 4 off the consent agenda, which was some unanticipated revenue from the Amherst PTA. So number 4 will be eliminated. I will take a motion to accept the consent agenda minus number 4.
I'll make that motion.
Victoria has a motion, a second.
Second.
I have a second from Josh. Any discussion items, any questions? I do want to thank the Amherst PTA for a donation of $3,900 to cover a variety of items at Amherst Middle School. So again, thank you for their fundraising abilities, number 1, and then for their dedication to be able to give back to the schools as well. So any other comments, any questions for the principals who are here tonight? Kristen Gothier from AMS and Kathleen Murphy from Clark Wilkins. Jason?
Yeah, I don't know if I have questions, just a couple things that I want to highlight that I really appreciate from both Clark Wilkins and from AMS. I'll just go, order of grade. So I really appreciate, the doing the staff wellness. I think that's helpful, right? The more that we can support educators, the better instruction there will be in the classroom. Additionally, I'm really excited about foundations. As I previously said, I'm like more of the literacy reading guy. And I I just really think this is the direction that we should be moving in with literacy instruction and beginning reading. And I love that we're collaborating with Merrimack and that more districts are getting and moving in this direction. So I think that that's exceptionally helpful. And I really appreciated the PD, how it was really geared towards teachers collaborating, right? And there's so much research that indicates that that's really where we get our best results. And it's really not that expensive. So it's a win-win. I'm not going to steal Steve's line.
Come on.
For AMS, I mentioned this last time for Kathleen, but now I'm going to mention it for you, Christine. I love that we only have 4 formal observations left. It's only 4, right? That's good. I was supposed to be a positive. That was not the reaction I was expecting. No, but the formal ones from my perspective are really like, that's the focus, and you have so much on your plate. So I'm really excited to see that there's only 4 formal left. Because like I said, you have so much on your plate between the bathrooms, which I'll leave to somebody else to talk about. But I really wanted just to highlight that we have these experiential learning, opportunities for kids, and that they're engaging in it, and I really think that really helps cement and mastering different skills for students. So the fact that you're really promoting those things are great. And to have 46% of students engaged in music programs is just phenomenal. So thank you both, as always, for your time and your reports.
I will go, Josh, before you. I'll go to Terry, who has her hand raised on Zoom tonight.
Yeah, honestly, pretty much everything I was going to say was just said, except for I was impressed that you managed to get a snow activity done with the lack of snow that we have had. I was like, woo, the 1 week it was on the ground, you got them out there, especially at the middle school. I know that there's always frustration among parents that we don't have our middle school kids in the snow quite as much, because there's just they refuse to wear protective gear, and there's a whole lot of reasons around it. So I was thrilled that you found a way to get them out there in the snow, even with a very small window. And honestly, I know that those formal evaluations are very time consuming, but very important. And really kudos to both principals and your staff in getting through those, because I know they're truly important. And I'm guessing that the more informal observational ones go a little quicker. And so I'm sure those will catch up. But I know that having them done this early in the year so that you could follow up on anything that you've observed, I think is really important. And so thank you for making the time for those. And the PD, just phenomenal on both ends. I was a little bit jealous of the AMS ones, I have to admit. It looked like it was a lot of fun and would have been really, really helpful. And I appreciate that the teachers have really have a lot of voice and choice this year. And I know that that's been very intentional, and I hope it's been well received.
Thank you, Terry. Josh?
So I'll echo Jason and Terry on professional development. Excited to see those. I'll echo Jason, I think, as well on the musical performances. I got to see one of them, and that was great at AMS. And then I also want to recognize, while we haven't had snow, I know there's an effort being made to offer snow play at AMS. Should we get snow next week, maybe there will be a chance for kids to get outside. So I sorry, buddy. Sorry. It'll come all at night, and then and then be fine. So I I appreciate that. And then I just want Kristen to give you a chance, if you wanted to update us both on bathroom behavior, some improvements that we're seeing, and then the beautification project and how that's all coming together.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate your positive comments. We're working hard, I think, at both levels to get all the things done for all the right reasons. So bathroom wise, we have, and I want to knock on wood or whatever this is made out of, because we've definitely had a decrease in terms of our bathroom behaviors. This is largely in part to the supervision from our staff. Our staff has really come together. We've done a lot of work as a whole staff in staff meetings, communicating through Slack as well, just about, how the types of supervision we need, one student out of the room at a time, really really well done sign out sheets. People are submitting their sign out sheets to the main office. So we're able to track trends and take a look at things. The traffic in the hallway has really been limited. We had a lot of supervision and again, help from people at the SAU as well as some of our teaching staff. So that was really helpful. We've weaned off of that a little bit after the Christmas break. For right now, things are going well. I received 30 to 40 entries for my various types. So full launch pads, full groups, individual students and groups of friends for our bathroom beautification contest. There was a lot to kind of cull through and there were a lot of great ideas. And so one of the things that what I did is with some help from our Eagle team, our social workers and our guidance counselors and our administrators, we sort of culled them together and put them into some themes. So we have wordy washroom, which is going to be quotes. So all the kids that gave me like positive quotes and positive thinking, they're going to work on the wordy washroom bathroom. We have an AMS Pride potty, which is all AMS Pride, Go Eagles, Your Courage to Care, all of those things. We have a locker room lavatory. So one of the themes was sports theme. So we're going to try to make it as sportsy and locker room as possible. And then we have nature calls, which is sort of our nature themed whales and turtles and those types of things. So we've got those 4 main bathrooms. We also have a ton of other kids who submitted designs, and I want to include them in the future. So we have single stall bathrooms. We have mural work that can be done in the building. So I have a list of those kids and I'm going to tap them for future projects. So we're going to start small. PTA is going to be providing us with some of the funding to do this and some volunteer help for supervision and some even some snacks and pizza because kids are pretty hungry after school. So we're going to be identifying, I'm going to be buying all the supplies, taking a couple days after school, having kids sign up to come and work on those spaces. And again, trying to make them really nice. So we're looking at, ordering things like decals and lights and paint and those types of things. So also, obviously working with Roger Preston so that he knows what our plans are. He already knows ahead of time that I'm going to be coming to him and letting him know about this. But that's kind of what we're going to be working on with the hope that this kind of gets done in March and we're able to leave that imprint on the school. So it's exciting. I'm excited to see it because they are pretty bland in there. And I think, in the hopes, obviously, that we can continue to decrease that vandalism, but also, add some more student ownership to our building.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you for the students and their participation as well. And hopefully there's some pride in there when it is done that they'll have some pride to keep it, clean and respectable, after their classmates have done that work. So, any other items on the consent agenda? Victoria?
I do. So AMS, it seems like everybody has covered everything, although I do want to give a public shout out to everybody who was on the AMS report, the principal's report, all the students who have won various awards. We have students with academic awards and students with athletic awards. So kudos to everybody. From Clark Wilkins' standpoint, it was great to hear about our student teachers for next year. Very happy that that's a program that's coming back. Can you talk a little bit about how the budget links in with our partnership?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the student teachers that are described in this report are undergraduate level interns for next year. So we actually have one of those undergraduate level interns right now in 4th grade working with Miss Alger. And then next fall, we'll have 4 of those students working in 2 kindergarten classrooms and 2 3rd grade classrooms. So those are students that are in their senior year at St. Anselm's earning an elementary education certification. They'll be full-time with us and they'll begin bridge hours this spring. So they're coming into our schools, spending about 30 to 40 hours with the classroom teachers, building up a relationship. And then they'll start with us beginning with our PD days in the summer and then leading into the school year. And they'll stay for the first semester for their experience. The program that's outlined in the budget is a little more of an intensified program. That program would provide us with fellows from St. Anselm's who have already graduated and earned their elementary education certification, and they are pursuing a master's degree in special education. those individuals would work closely with reading specialists and case managers, supporting students in classrooms and small groups, and helping to learn the skills of being a special educator, a critical shortage in the field nationwide and certainly in our local area too. So those students come to us already licensed educators. They have all done this initial student teaching experience at the senior level, and they'll come to us as licensed educators and ready to work with students across the whole year. And we'll have those individuals for the whole year should the budget pass, and we're able to extend the partnership to include the graduate level program. But either way, we're very happy to continue with the undergraduate level partnership with St. A's. We have many graduates of St. Anselm's that are now employed teachers with us at AMS and at Clark Wilkins. So just, happy to have that connection and work together as we support the field.
Thank you, Kathleen. Victoria, any more?
Yeah. Number 6 in the consent agenda is the library furniture. And I'm just kind of wondering what's being planned. It shows that it's a transfer from our regular furniture fund to the library fund. If we can just talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, Kathleen, and she can do, but yes, it's to upgrade and start and continue our work in improving as a literacy center, the library, but Kathleen.
Yeah, so we found there's a small level of funding available right now in a line for replacement furniture. It's not the same line as library replacement furniture, so looking to make that transfer of funds to the library. And our first effort will be to replace the tables and chairs. The tables and chairs that are in that space are not suitable for children at our current grade bands of 1st through 4th grade. It's recycled furniture from, I believe, AMS a long time ago, and we are grateful for that furniture. But we are looking to get more appropriate furniture in that space. So we have worked with our librarian to get some designs. We have a quote ready to go and hoping for that budget transfer to be able to provide us with that first step towards improving that space. All of the furniture that we are purchasing would be completely movable to a new building. So as we think about that, as it's on the ballot, any furniture that we are purchasing would be something that would be able to come with us should that pass.
Anything else, Victoria? Okay. So with that, I will take a vote on approving the consent agenda minus item number 4. We will have to do a roll call vote with Terry being remote tonight. So Terry, I will start with you if you'd like to do yours first, and we'll go around the room here.
Beam, yes.
White, yes.
Conklin, yes.
Gracie, yes.
And Gothier, yes. So 5 votes for and none against. I do want to mention before we leave that I want to thank everybody that was able to go to the Invention Convention last night. I know it's a big night at the elementary school, and as Kathleen and I said, I wasn't able to make it last night, and she said you're not able to crush kids' invention dreams when you go and judge there. So I felt good about that afterwards, but thank you for hosting that again. And I know Ms. Polio does a lot of work with that, and I know that there's a lot of good people to take over her spot when she retires eventually, and has it going forward. And I know Terry was there. Terry, any comments from you? Any thoughts from you about Invention Convention last night?
Yeah, no, it is one of my favorite things all year, and it did not disappoint. The last of my good health was spent on it, and it was well worth it. No, I can't wait to have some of them come and present. And I have to say, I really love the new format of doing the videos so that we can kind of get a preview and see when the kids are comfortable and at home and it's not quite so noisy, and then following up with them in person. I really think that it's a great opportunity for us to dive a little deeper into their thought process. And just so much thanks to all of the many volunteers who go into making that a great experience for our kids. It is fun to see what they come up with every year. It's always kind of really incredible.
Thank you, Terry. And we'll work on in the future, seeing if we can have some of those kids that were the winners, having them here. We've done that in the past, and Terry brought it to my attention. We'll talk about that for a future meeting if we can as well. Great. So moving on next to our subcommittee meetings, a couple of things I want to bring up here. Before we do this, I do want to at least recognize the elephant in the room, if you will. Josh Conklin has done a lot of great work on probably our most important subcommittee this year with our superintendent. And correct me, Josh, have we had a meeting since we named since we made the offer to Mike Berry for superintendent?
No, we will review that at the next SAU meeting.
But we talked, we haven't had one of these meetings since we at least had made had voted as an SAU board, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Mike Barrett, if you missed it, was selected as the school board candidate and is moving forward in that negotiation process with the SAU board committee on that. But I do want to thank Josh for all his work on that. It was essentially a full-time job working with NESDEC. And even though we had a consultant, sometimes that probably makes it feel like we have more work to do because they give us assignments and deadlines to meet. So I want to thank Josh for that, but I also want to recognize Josh for all of his work over the last couple of years, because tonight is his final Amherst School Board regular board meeting. We'll have him around for a few other things between now and voting day, and you'll get to see him on voting day as well. But on behalf of the board, Josh, thank you for all your work, and especially with that superintendent, certainly, made an impact here in that last year in a big way. I would say the same to Terry. Yes, thank you. But Terry is running for office again, Terry. So hopefully we'll see you around somewhere. It's a small town, so but good luck on election day. And if we don't have a chance to have you in an official meeting capacity, thank you for all your work. It's been 6 years for you, and this is your third term that you're going for. So we wish you the best of luck on the 14th. But again, thank you for your advocacy. I know that you're probably in the schools more than any of us somehow with your job. I don't know how you do it. But thank you for that and for all your work in the last 6 years as well. All right. So with that done, anybody else have any subcommittee meetings? Josh doesn't have anything for anything else beyond the superintendent, unless you want to mention that, Josh. I might have stolen your thunder on that, but anything else you want to follow up on that?
No, I think we'll meet on the 23rd next week to discuss
Okay.
the contract and hopefully make everything official at that point. We did approve some policies tonight for the policy subcommittee and rescinded some policies as well as part of our consent agenda. And Victoria will be continuing on, I hope, in the policy world coming up in future years. But that work will continue, I am sure, moving forward. We've thanked the PTA who continue to do great things in our schools. But that's all of my subcommittee stuff.
Okay. Anybody else with any subcommittee notes? Victoria?
Yeah, so I've got the Amherst Building and Grounds Subcommittee to mention here. I'm going to note that later, a couple spots later in our agenda, our administrators will be talking about some things at AMS. So we have been active and we've been meeting monthly. We've agreed on a phasing option for the roof and unit ventilator work at AMS that we will present to ASB. However, we're awaiting refinement of costs from EEI, which is Energy Efficient Investments. We plan to see those on March 31st. Right now, we have an order of magnitude costs, so we'll be waiting to present those to you guys when we have more detailed costs. The firm works with other schools in the area, including Hollis Brookline, Manchester, and other various towns. They often phase projects like this over time, which is great. They've been able to kind of talk to us about where we're at and where we need to go. We've discussed different financing options with them, including leasing or including like a 4-year staged process, and then something to finish out in the end of those 4 years to get the whole project done.
That would be the whole project, not just phase one then.
For all of the unit ventilators.
Okay, thank you.
Not the roof, the unit ventilators.
Correct.
Once the costs and the timelines are finalized, then Building Grounds will come to present all of that. And I hope, and I think the rest of that group hopes that will be at the April school board meeting. Let's see, what else? As a school board, we've lightly discussed the future facility options if warrant article 12 does not pass, and portables have been mentioned at our school board meetings. We would continue to research them as a way to augment the space constraints. Currently with our programming, there's 70,000 square feet that is missing, and that's the equivalent of both Clark and Wilkins. So portables would be likely, if we go that route, portables would likely be used at Clark, Wilkins, and AMS. So Roger has received costing information on portables, and Building and Grounds will begin discussing that at the next meeting. The costs were included at a very high level in the board's recent response to the Ways and Means reports, citing approximately $9 million cost for the temporary portables. And then knowing that they're temporary, the board will also have to weigh in on ways to financially plan for replacement if that route is taken. So that's something that I think is just important for the board to know, that that building and grounds group is looking at, what happens on March 16th. We'll give ourselves a day. And what happens on March 16th is we have to start thinking one direction or the other. And it's either we have a school or we need to figure out where we're going to put all the students and how we're going to fix some systems. So that group is working hard at that. And the other piece on there are the upcoming dates that are open for the public to come and talk to school board members. All of these dates will be on the SAU39.org calendar. But two that I just wanted to mention, one is during the week. It's on February 21st at 11:30 at the town library. It's happening downstairs near the children's library. So hopefully people can, feel free to pop in, ask us questions. What we're going to do is essentially host a neighborhood coffee, but it's like a public neighborhood coffee. So if you haven't been able to find one in your neighborhood or you weren't interested in hosting yourself, feel free to come down at that day. And then the other one that we have scheduled so far is Monday, March 6th, and that's at 6 o'clock at the Wilkins School. And same concept there, but it's also just 1 week before voting. So you'll have a chance to come into the school if you want to see that.
Okay. Only subcommittee update I had came out of deliberative talking with Bob Grunbeck. He mentioned in the deliberative that there are other ways for a school board to legally save money, if you will, aside from a capital reserve fund. So with the trustees of the trust fund, we do have a library fund that we currently utilize. Clearly, that's not enough to pay for much beyond books and furniture. So we'll be talking with Bob at one of the next trust fund committee meetings, or sitting down with him at a different time, just to start getting the ideas and the planning that goes into creating something like that. So we can create a long-term fund that would allow us to invest while also saving some of that principal as well. And that way we can start getting return on the money, as we've all seen with the inflation and the interest rates. Certainly losing quite a bit having it in a CRF, but we're not actually losing that money. But we are losing it when you compare it to the interest rate and the inflation rate. So something that we will be studying with Bob here as we go forward, to find a way to be able to do that responsibly with taxpayer money, but also being able to invest wisely and save for school needs down the road. So Terry, anything from you? Okay.
Steve, was there anything in RSEC this morning that we should share out?
Sorry.
That's the worst button, by the way. It's a touch screen volume control.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Hate that. Yeah, I can do other things too. We can talk about that.
There we go.
At RSEC, so one of the duties that I'm privileged to have is to serve on the RSEC board. Today, Terry, because Andy and Christy weren't there, I actually chaired the meeting, which was exciting. We approved the budget, FY24 budget, which is a regional approach, and we're a member district. But also, we authorized to take a look at RSEC hiring and having a service for member districts for school psychologists. Because school psychologists are so rare, they think there's a way that they can do that in farms if we need extra support. So RSEC, it benefits our kids, it benefits me, because I get to learn about alternative ways and ways to help kids. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Terry, for that. I do want to go on to our next agenda item, going back to our deliberative session, which was last week. It seems like it was about a month ago at this point. So last Monday night, I do want to thank Victoria, who carried a lot of the weight that night with our facilities presentation. Many comments after in terms of the quality of it and the depth of the presentation. So thank you for doing that. I know it's been 2 or 3 years in the making, but it certainly doesn't make it any easier to go through and to consolidate it into a condensable, digestible format. So thank you for that. With that, I will open it up to any board members, any comments, any concerns. I know we have voting day a little less than a month away now, 26 days away. So certainly a lot of work to do to make sure we're getting information out there, and some of these coffee chats that we have, and PTA general meeting next week, we'll have that, and some different sessions that we'll be able to coordinate for public information. But I'll open it up for any thoughts or any comments from last week's meeting, or just anything in general as we get closer to voting day.
One of the items up until the last couple of weeks, I've done little Wednesday videos relatively regularly. Short, quick, 3-4 minutes. Happy to have board members come, and we could do a 5-minute on each, or 3-minute on each article. I could ask you some questions and we could talk about each article, budget, just really 3 to 4 minutes, quick hits to get them out there. It's a strategy that people have used in other districts. So we could talk just like basically like what are the 5 important things about the contract that'll help kids? What are the 4 highlights that drove this budget development, the literacy? So we've talked about it a million times, but a quick 5-minute, we can kick and put it out there and put it on the site. Offer no pressure. We could go, it'd be very quick. We'd put the camera up, we'd talk for 5 minutes. And just trying to get more pieces so they have information about all the different articles offered to you, but easily ignored too. I can just do it. I mean, I planned on doing a few, I previewed the last couple of weeks have been a little busy. But if you want to, let me know. Abby will arrange the meetings. We can reach out to Abby or you can do it without me too, by the way. I don't need to be there. I'm not trying, but I'm actually to help, to sit. It's and Abby edits out any of my F-bombs. No, I don't drop. He edits out stuff. I was joking.
It's getting late.
I was joking.
Thank you, Zach. I think it's a good idea for us to be able to do that as we have all noticed at deliberative, and then as we will notice on election day 12 through 18 are direct Amherst School Board warrant articles, and then Article 19 impacts the school board with the tax cap warrant article, which we'll address on Monday night in a public hearing. So there's a lot of stuff on the ballot, a lot of information that you can certainly find on on the SAU website. On the front there, Ways and Means has its reports on the Ways and Means page of that website as well. I will just bring up that there have been some comments on Facebook, if you've been following it, about the Ways and Means tax impact, not calculator, estimator. That's what it was called. So we have discussed that. We discussed that last night at Ways and Means. It is on there. It is a tool. It's important to realize that it is an estimator, but they have provided that and created that for folks just to get an idea as to what warrant articles cost. But I know that there were concerns with the board on that, so I at least wanted to bring it up and take any questions or anything on that. Terry, I see that your hand is raised, so I'll let Steve get his microphone up. Let me know when you're ready, Steve. And Terry, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I will say I have a couple of concerns about how far it goes, because I think that to say what would it do to your taxes with the year that we're looking at is absolutely appropriate, and even taking data from previous years, fine. Having comparison against them, I think, makes total sense. I think that there are too many unknowns going forward. I mean, honestly, if they feel like if they prognosticate to the point that they can feel confident about all of those unknowns, then maybe they can come help me pick out some, lottery numbers. But I don't feel like we have enough information about what happens to the town, and I certainly would never speak to a future board. And we're very careful to not criticize previous ones, not knowing what some of their motivations were and the things that they had to prioritize and what else was going on with them. And I wouldn't want to speak for future boards. And so looking so far into the future just seems inappropriate to me. So I would be more comfortable if it simply dealt with the year they were asked to look at, which was this year. And if they want to include any comparisons to previous years and how that compares, absolutely. But the number of years it goes forward, I find that I'm uncomfortable with, and presenting it as reliable data where it is just an educated guess for a lot of the elements that go into that.
Thank you, Terry. I will say that it does have the disclaimers on that it is an estimator. And I think, again, even there are elements this year that I think that folks would be hesitant to cast opinions on. So it is an estimator, and they point that out in there as well. So any other comments about deliberative? Any other comments on the tax estimator? Victoria?
Yep. So prior to being on the Amherst School Board, was on Ways and Means. And on Ways and Means, I was known to be fiscally conservative. I care about the tax impact. I am not belittling the amount of money that all of these different warrant articles will impact taxpayers, will impact all of us as board members. That being said, I agree with Terry that this is overreaching of making assumptions and estimates in the future, where the Ways and Means Committee is supposed to be, from my understanding, is supposed to be looking at the current year's budget. When it comes to the contracts and when it comes to like the second year of the bond for the facility, I understand looking at those numbers. But when we talk about all of the different parts that are in that estimator, I'm uncomfortable with it because it includes different school districts. It includes the town. It includes things like we have just recently seen the governor's, first draft of the budget come out. That's vastly different than what the budget was for the last biennium. And this estimator looks at 5 years out, which is 2.5 bienniums, I think, if that's how it lines up, So for me, it's just, there's a lot of assumptions. I don't have a problem with the fact that it is created and that it is a tool. I do not think that it is a tool that our SAU website should be hosting. I just don't feel like it's proper in that capacity. If it were a tool that were shared by individual citizens, 100%, I support it. I just have a hard time thinking that this is what we're putting out as an SAU, because I think there is intent. I think there is intent based on the reports and the voters guide responses and how votes have gone. I think there is an intent and a bias leading toward the use of that impact calculator.
Jason, Josh, anything from you guys?
I guess I'll just kind of echo Victoria's concerns. If it is, I will be completely transparent. I haven't looked a whole lot at the tax estimator or anything like that, but I do know that out in the community, I've heard lots of concerns about it. That there's variables and things like that. But with all that said, if we're posting it on the SAU website, I think it gives it more credibility than maybe it warrants if we're hearing all these concerns. So I guess I'm just kind of echoing Victoria's concern. Maybe we shouldn't be posting it on the SAU website.
So we had this discussion last night and I've talked with Nate about this and Nate is the, is the moderator for an entity that is separate from Amherst School Board. So certainly not our decision to vote to take it off or anything. I don't know. We have that authority. We can certainly have discussions with SAU management. But I think when you start to look at that, you're looking at the entire SAU board that's involved because it does involve Mount Vernon. Now, maybe it doesn't involve their tax impact, but it also does involve Sauhegan Cooperative board members. So certainly discussions that we can have, we can bring up and then discuss it at that point. But yeah, so that was my only thought for that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So anyway, so it is up there. And obviously folks just use it. It's an estimator. That's essentially what it is. We do have time with Ways and Means later on tonight. They can add any insight that they might have on that, but it is on the website there. And then obviously the Ways and Means reports are there as well. You can find our reports on the front page of the SAU website as well. So again, as we get ready for deliberative voting day, 26 days away, more information for people to have is better. Certainly, as you go further down in anything like this, it becomes a little more gray. Victoria mentioned the state legislative session. It does bring us up into, or mention the governor's budget, I should say. It is worth noting as we go to our next agenda item, we had a meeting with our legislative delegate. 4 of the 5 folks were able to make it last week. Representatives Jen Morton, Megan Murray, and Dan Vayu, and then Senator Shannon Chanley. We had a board meeting on Friday at the Brick School, had a chance to sit down with them, get their thoughts on items that are going through the state educationally, and then focus and really advocate for some of the bills that are of concern to not only Amherst, but other districts as well, particularly with special education funding, with part of the budgeting that allows for certain things to be included in default budget and then other things having to be excluded, like transportation contracts, how you cannot include those in a default budget, advocating for those to make budgeting easier and make budgeting more consistent. As it stands right now in our budget, if the proposed budget fails, our bus contract is not, any increases we have are not built into that default budget, even though it's a legally binding contract, which doesn't make any sense when teacher contracts are and other contracts are. So trying to find a way to advocate with the state to change the way that default is made up so that you don't, if you go to a default budget, you're not losing an increase in another service, or you're not losing another service because you have to fund a previously obligated item like a bus contract with an increase there. And then certainly if you see fuel costs increase like we have been, those items are not included in the default budget. Just a quick update before I open it up for the board on that. The governor did announce his budget plan on Tuesday this week, an additional 200 million going towards public education, which is a significant investment. Now, granted, a lot of that will be based on districts where there is a greater need. And will be a lot of those grants, ideally, if the full 200 million goes through, will be dedicated towards the free and reduced lunch program in districts that are experiencing a lot of that. There is a $75 million funding for the school building aid fund, as opposed to 40 in the last biennium. That is in the budget. And then they're looking to do the educational freedom accounts, doubling those from 25 to close to 60. Now, it's all on paper at this point, written in very, very light pencil with erasers handy. But I certainly think that item number 2 in particular for this district is important, with the school building aid almost doubling from the last biennium, the one that'll end on July 1st to the one that'll come up and start on July 1st this year. So good news in that regard. Again, how likely we are to get building aid is slim, but that's at least one of the bills or one of the items in the governor's budget, in addition to a couple of other bills that are potentially going through about building aid funding as well. You can find information on the state website. They do have a lot of educational bills that are going through, but you can follow the progress on some of those where there is considerable interest in this district. I actually think they had some hearings today for some of those building aid bills as well. Some of them will die in committee, some of them won't get out, and some of them will eventually go to the House or Senate floor. So, but you can certainly follow those there. With that long soliloquy, any questions from the board, any comments from the board? 4 of us were able to make it. Some of us have teaching that we do during the day, so we have students that we're working with. But Josh, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, so I just want to thank the board and our legislators and our SAU for organizing this event. I thought it was extremely helpful to have this conversation. I think there is goodwill on both sides to continue having these kind of conversations moving forward, and potentially trying to line them up a little bit better with, so for advocacy purposes, we can be advocating, or the future board can be advocating during a time when bills are coming up in the legislature. So I really think this was great. I think it's a great connection to continue to have, and I look forward to seeing it build and grow from here.
One of the items they did mention was that a lot of the bills you have to get the bills propose the bills in the month of November. So a lot of that work takes place in the fall. So it's our intent when the new board is convened in March to be able to meet late summer with our delegates, the representatives and the senators, just to start to have those conversations on what's important to this district and be able to really get that in their ear before they go to the floor in that bill creation process. To see where, what we can advocate for, what we can potentially impact, and other items that concern our district that might be of a benefit to this district and the taxpayers here in town. So we'll continue to monitor that. But again, getting that on the schedule in a regular rotation will be helpful. It was a very productive meeting for the first time. And thanks, Steve, for organizing that with the delegates and having them take time out of their day to come down and talk too.
Before we move on, can Steve, if you don't mind, if I put you on the spot, can you describe the special education funding bill that we discussed?
Sure. So IDEA and special education funding has been a item for me to watch for a long time. IDEA was put in place at a desired funding level at 40%, 40% federal government, 60% local. It's ended up being about 17 or 18% federal government, all the rest local. And then there's the state piece. And so there's something called special education aid. Used to be called catastrophic aid. These are the situations in where the cost per student is 6 figures, 150,000, 200,000. Right now, the state share doesn't start picking up until, let's say, the first 90,000 is taken up by the local. There's a bill that would say the first 20,000 is taken up by local. So the share would start, and that would close that $70,000 gap, which would be an incredible thing for every single taxpayer in New Hampshire to share that burden throughout the entire state, as opposed to one local. And there's a bill that has been filed, an LSR, legislative service request, that would change that share, which would be significant for every single taxpayer, whether you have kids or not, whether you're in the city or not, whether you're in Gorham, whether you're in Amherst, you're in Hollis, you're in Hop, you're in Franklin. It would change for every single taxpayer. And I just think it is absolutely an incredibly impactful thing. And there was some talk too about making IDEA funded as it was desired up to 40, but the federal government went to their cost at 40% and the state picked up starting after 1.5 times. You would have extraordinary tax relief and shared meeting help meeting the needs of the most vulnerable kids and the most complicated kids we have, which is a shared responsibility of our community about how we care about kids statewide. I was in a very, I as much as I can, and will continue to advocate for that because that is a tax relief for every single taxpayer in New Hampshire.
I wish somebody that would come up with some better names. It sounds like a very 1950s name for that type of program for catastrophic aid. It's
now it's called special education aid.
well, as it should be. It's catastrophic aid's a little harsh. I had a comment on Zoom. If you can have the mic a little closer when you speak, Steve. No, nobody had a comment, but
Sorry about that.
comment for you and your microphone abilities. So
We'll do that. I'll work on it.
thank you. The only other thing I'll mention from the legislative session is the American Rescue Plan that was passed a year ago. That is, there's about another, I want to say it was 81 million that's going to be going to Hillsborough County. That's going to be dedicated to, I thought it was schools, if I'm
So
correct.
we did follow up. The schools are not eligible for the county fund.
Oh, well, there we go.
We have
Problem
that
solved.
from the county manager. I meant to put it in board notes. I apologize.
Nope,
but
no worries.
thank you for that. So yes, we have the documentation from the county that says schools are not eligible for that aid.
Well, it takes that off the plate. We were going to talk about projects that we could potentially apply for and finding ways to utilize some of those funds and apply, but we will not bring that up now. So, all right, Steve, I will turn it over to you for our roof and heating unit project update.
Sure. And Victoria, thank you for leading this on. I'll just add a few things. So let's talk roofs for a minute. Is our AMS, it is a strong goal to make this place watertight. We've talked about that for a long time. This is not a patch program. This is a phase program to replace very old, interconnected with new old roofs. We're working with Banwell and EEI, as Victoria talked about, a firm that does lots of schools work to take a look at our roofs. So how do they do it? They look at the drawings. They've actually tried to find the architectural drawings for every roof. One of our roofs, we don't have the architectural drawings. So now we have to make architectural drawings for that roof. We think they are mirrored with a roof that we have architectural drawings. So we're forming that. So some interesting things. So what they do is they drill cores to determine the quality and the amount of insulation that remains on our roofs. When they did that, at some point in the history of Amherst Middle School, someone thought it was a really good idea to put a second layer of the roof insulation on top. That is unusual in schools because snow load and there's very tight snow load dynamics. So we have engineers taking a look at that. And to see, like we haven't had tons of snow in the past, so it's not like I stay up, worried about this, but that's an interesting thing. And so we are getting what EEI is going to produce and already is close to producing is an analysis of every single roof we have, age and condition, and a phase to replace those. The most vulnerable right now, we know over the library, I think in the stage are the most leaks. So we're going after that first. So this roof project is intertwined with a heating ventilator project. So years ago, the board and facility group decided that we would go with at Amherst Middle School the cheapest way possible to heat those rooms. Individualized heating ventilators that are connected to the windows, and they're all single units. So when we looked at this, there's 3 different approaches to heating that bill, all with cost differential, quality of heat differential, and ventilation differential, and durability differential. And the building and grounds is trying to combine cost effectiveness, quality of heating and ventilation, and durability. So what we're getting close to, and we're going to get all the cost information, is not replacing the heating ventilator units with the window single units. We are talking about going to rooftop units that would do areas of the school. Now, it is funky in that you don't want to put a rooftop unit and then replace the roof. So these will be the phase program. They will talk about how you do it when you're doing the roofs, because this now requires ductwork, right? Because we are now going to have a system-wide versus just one thermostat in, Barbara Chihune's room up and down. This is going to be connected throughout the building. We looked at, like some districts have put the units inside the schools, hanging like in the shop room. There is room there to put one hanging because of where the ceiling is. But there isn't the room to do one unit that would do 10 classrooms. That would require taking, like, we'd have a unit room, and we don't want to give up classroom space to hold ventilator, even though it would last a little bit longer, but we can't sacrifice classroom space for that. So we're going on top. We're going rooftop units that would be systemic. We get better ventilation and better efficiency. We don't get quite as long lasting as in school because weather outside versus inside. But it is a significant upgrade to an individual thermostat room. So as Victoria said, we're trying to get the whole project cost and phased at the end of March and bringing it here to April. So one of the things that I talked about in board notes, one of the things that Building and Grounds talked about is pay as you go through fund balance, like we're doing for the first 4 or 5 years. Significant work all planned out. And then I think I wrote about 28, 29, I think I put that in board notes. There's a $200,000 payment of a bond coming off. So my recommendation, we'll talk to Mike and obviously Amy, would be you want to go hand in glove. So at that some point, Amy's going to call the bond bank and say, for a $200,000 payment, how much bond can we get? And the hope is pay as you go for 4 years, hand in glove. And I would say a 10-year bond, not a 20-year bond, a 10-year bond will hopefully give us $6 million, no differential in your tax, right? Because it's hand in glove, finishes up the project. And I hope it finishes up, all the near-term roof, because there's some roofs we don't have to replace for 20 years. We know that, right? Because we have some that are 10 years old. But by hopefully the hand in glove bond, pay as you go, pay as you go, pay as you go, pay as you go, fund balance, not impact on the tax rate, except if we give it back. There will be no new tax rate stuff. And then hand in glove bond cleans up all the rest. And we have done all the heating and ventilating it. Now, Kristen and I and Amy, we were hoping that the project could be roof and heating ventilator project could be finished on pay as you go, and then use the bond for office renovations and classroom renovations. We'll see, but I suspect it's going to take hand in glove bond to finish off the heating, ventilation, and roofs. You with me? But this approach does not add. I mean, it is taxing, but it's not new taxes.
No, but it doesn't take away a bond that's coming off either. And if we had a bond coming off in 4 years, it doesn't remove that bond. It just continues any sort of bond payment. So yeah, I would say just as a board member, I'd want to see what the numbers are and find a way to pay as you go and see what those other priorities are that would need to be
fair.
That would be pay as you go instead of bonding. What's that process look like 5 or 6 years from now? Just obviously we have a big bond that we're putting on in 26 days. So just something to look at when we get to that point in March. Not that we're not going to, but that's my initial thought on it.
Either way, you get a little bit of relief or you get a little bit of stability. I love bonds coming off. Those are good.
So when we're talking about replacing the unit ventilators, the ones that are in the classroom, those are, if I'm not mistaken, those are cut out of the wall. So if you take those ventilators out, you're gonna have a hole in the wall in every one of these classrooms. So is this what's being budgeted is the replacements for those? And then can you do it where you're replacing parts of a brick wall? Can you make it seamless so that it's insulated, no leaks?
Yes,
It seems to be pricey to me when you think about that.
Correct. And they do this, and this is because a lot of schools did it 8 million years ago, decided to put heating ventilators right next to window, door by door. Or window by window. But yes, and so they part of this would be the casement replacement.
So they probably do the whole window, right?
We need windows anyway for efficiencies, and you do the casement storage.
Okay.
But that'll be in the package.
That gives you a better frame to work with though, too.
Yep. And that's also part of the reason why Banwell has been so integral in this process, because initially when we started talking about this at the building and grounds level, we were envisioning just a replacement of that wall. What are the options for replacement of that wall? Replace the window, insulate the brick, all of those type of things, and then fix that unit ventilator. So that's why they're coming to us with several options, and why building and grounds will, kind of make a recommendation and come to the board and explain the recommendation, very much similar to how JFAC worked with the LaValle Brenzinger options and when those were presented. So there's different options to look at and all different costs.
It's amazing to me when you look back at a project like this from 40, 30, 40, 50 years ago and you think, who in the world designed this? Like, at what point does that make sense when you're thinking 50 years down the road? Because it happens all over the place. It's not just schools. I mean, there are buildings in New York. You go there and you can see what are the ventilators on the side. It just thinks like, how is that the most cost efficient, long-term solution to doing something like that? And maybe that's what it is. It's cheap, but it's
It is
very strange.
So with my focus on facilities, if you think about the science wing over at AMS, which is the 20-year-old new wing, one of the decisions that was made by that committee was to put in the unit ventilators there. And they knew when they were making that decision that it was a less expensive option. And because of the money that they had and where the community kind of weighed in on voting and things like that, they knew that they were making that decision. And it's something that I've talked to those different
Sure.
members over the last year.
Good. And people tied me saying it, the board and administrator involved in 20-year decisions. Lots of 20-year decisions. And that was a 20-year, 30-year decision. And now this board and this Baylor Building Grounds is trying to make a really good. So 20 years from now, I look back, who thought that was a good idea?
Josh?
So that was sort of my point is I think we hear sometimes from the public frustration around why can't we just, snap our fingers and make it watertight. And we're trying to avoid that situation where we discover 30 years from now, they just layered a second roof on and there's a problem there. That this is a process where we're trying to make the smartest, quickest decisions we can make. But I appreciate all the work that has gone in already and the work that this board will continue to do in the coming months.
Thanks. I appreciate that time.
No, thank you, Steve. I will say that your criticism of a dual roof is irresponsible. If you ever worn suspenders and a belt, your pants don't go anywhere. So just saying, there are some things where it's worth doing. So,
Mr. Preston was shocked when that.
all right. So, at that point, we are at our Ways and Means section tonight. We have some folks that are here tonight. I don't know if Dwayne, Muzi, Greg, if you guys would like to come on up. And we do have some Ways and Means members on lines as well. I see Jeff, Mike, Steve. So just about the full crew tonight. Appreciate you guys coming down again. I know you've just had your meeting last night.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, we couldn't sleep, so thought we'd come on down here.
It's overrated, Dwayne. At least you weren't dreaming about it in the morning. So
One day, sleep for a long, long time. Couple of things. I guess we'll work backwards.
Sure.
The tax estimator. There are a series of assumptions that go with that. And, for the record, we did make request for the same kind of thing from administration. What would it look like 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out with a set of assumptions? So we were able to put that together. Now that it sits on the SAU website, we are part of the SAU. And, you've had that discussion. We had that discussion last night. And while I appreciate there may be some concerns with it, willing certainly to discuss those concerns, but what cannot happen is we're censored. And that is a real consideration. So, and if that's the case, there's a lot of stuff on the website that is far from accurate. So things that are on there are not necessarily a ringing endorsement as much as this is the opinion or the findings or whatever the data says. So that's where we are on that. To suggest any more than that, it is simply to give an idea as to what we would be looking at this year, assuming this year all things pass. The next year, I mean, teacher contract is what? How many years? 3 years out.
3 years, yeah.
This building is 25 to 30 years out. Don't know what's decided there. So that we're talking 5 years. And the further you get out in time, obviously, it becomes more of an estimate. We are well aware of that. I would dare say, given the climate, that it's not so much an estimate, but probably further you get out in time, an underestimate. But we just don't know. We do have an idea that given certain conditions, what you will be looking at with your tax bill. So that's the response there. The other thing is, sorry.
if you don't mind doing it in the mic, right? We can't hear you there.
Yeah, so I appreciate some of the kind of uncertainty around any assumptions or any forecasts. if there's any particular assumptions that you don't agree with, that would be good to hear about, because what we try to do is use the assumptions that you told us that you were using. We tried to align this to your models, like on the 25-year bond for the facility plan. We use your numbers, and you have those numbers too shared on your own websites. It's 25 years, 5 3/4. And I think it's going to be much. I don't think we're going to have to pay that much. I think I have to be less than $800 per average resident. I think it's closer to somewhere 700, 800 when we're all done, right? So we're trying to use your number, trying to act as an oversight committee on your data. What is the impact of this series of warrants? There's nothing in here that's certainly intended to be advocacy or misleading in any way, or to lead the reader to certain conclusions. So I think I speak for myself, but I suspect everybody on Ways and Means would love to hear Victoria, what particularly you may have, or Terry, I know you had some particular comments. Anybody else, if they happen to see something that they is not representing the board's projections fairly, we will analyze those things. We try to analyze what you've told us.
Well, I think it's the unknowns, Greg. We don't know what the budget increase is going to be next year or decrease. It's more of those that we can't speak to what a budget increase is going to be, knowing that you used a 3.9%. It's the theory behind it. And then obviously in 4 years, 3.5 years, we'll have new valuations. So that's going to impact it. So obviously the further out you get, and it's probably fairly short window, 5 years as opposed to 20 years, that scale of that margin of error increases. It's more of that. So if somebody's looking at it for 5 years and is planning their tax budget on it, I would say that's probably not a wise thing for them to do. But that was, I think, what I read from the board, the concerns.
Any recommendations for wording we could add to the estimator to help make that more clear? And you don't have to do it tonight, but if you could let us know, we want this to be as fair of a tool, explain the uncertainty. It is a forecast. I think people realize when they look at the calendar that it is in fact 2023, and that 2027 is not a hard known thing. So sorry, Terry, I can't help you buy lottery tickets. If I could, I totally would. So yeah, I just want to make sure that like the intention is not maligned, because that was certainly well thought out. We had multiple working meetings. You all were invited to those meetings. We had business administrator at those meetings. She's not here tonight, but I think she validated the calculations we're doing, the reasoning behind them. It was open and public meeting process. So hopefully that clears up any kind of perceived bias or animosity in the math.
I would like to make. Good evening, everybody. Muzi Hussaini here, Amherst. So
as part of Ways and Means, correct, Muzi?
And part of Ways and
No, but are you speaking now you're speaking on Ways and Means at this point, correct?
Yes,
okay.
I am. So this estimator, it's a point in time estimator, gives you a rough order of magnitude. We have been asked by many people, hey, what does it mean? We recreated this year's current tax bill, and the estimator works perfectly with it. It is giving an idea, if everything remains constant or with this XYZ assumption, this could be you could be looking at roughly on the second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, X amount of dollars. That's all. It was never meant to be a certified number that you bet on. It gives people a rough order of magnitude, an idea what every single thing would collectively cost to a town taxpayer. That's all. There was no other intention for it. That's it.
Thank you, Muzi. Terry had her hand raised. Jason, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I'd like to say, first off, I hope that it certainly is not thought that we are thinking that there's an ill intention. I do think that it's just meant as another data point for communication and for discussion. However, I would say the only things that we can really know for sure, and even some of those are not entirely known, right? Like we don't know what our bond rate would be if we were to pass our building project. However, I would be comfortable with you saying, hey, we've given this estimate of what we think the top end would be. So fine, use that and extrapolate out from that. If it were to simply cover the warrants that we actually have control over and say, okay, it's a multi-year It's a multi-year teacher contract, and we know it's going to cost us this much per year. It's a multi-year this. And if you wanted to show those numbers, I think that's entirely appropriate. I think that it's only when you're bringing in town unknowns and other budget unknowns, that's where my problem is, because they are literally unknowns. And so you can make a guesstimate, but when you put into something semi-official looking, it doesn't feel like a guesstimate. It feels like it has weight behind it. And so I just think that, yes, there are disclaimers, but how many of us read our, when you update your agreement on your phone or do whatever, how many of us actually read all of that, right? You look at it and it feels official. And that is my concern, that if you were to simply stick to the things that are knowns, well, then, yeah, you can extrapolate out as far as possible. But when you put so many unknowns and just do your best guesstimate, even if it's a somewhat educated guesstimate, it's still a guesstimate. And I just think that it's misleading. I don't think you mean to be misleading, but I think that there's a reason we haven't done the same, because there are too many unknowns. That's really, I think, our concern across the board. It's not that I think that anyone is intentionally trying to mislead. That is certainly not my impression, and I'm sorry if it came across that way. But it's still a
Thank you for
concern.
the clarification, if I may speak now. If we can put a flashing orange sign that says it's an unofficial guesstimator, would that satisfy your concern? Because this is an estimator is exactly what that is, guesstimator. Thank you. I hope you don't-
You get a laugh out of Terry. You can't see the video, Muzi, but Terry got a good laugh out of that. Jason?
Yeah, sure. So I think, at least from my perspective, everyone's abandoned you, Dwayne. Everyone's left. Is for me, this is just one piece in a cumulative effect, and I think this is why it's kind of raising so much ire with people. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but if anybody else agrees. And so what I mean, so I just kind of am looking at like the collective of kind of what's taking place since I've been on the board. I can't speak prior to that. So in January, a Ways and Means Committee member speaking as Ways and Means said, when talking about the teacher contract, said, we looked at the budget, there was nothing to cut in the line item budgets. Right? There were no suggestions on things to cut in the line item budgets. That was indicated. And then we go to deliberative and find unanimously opposed to the budget. So I think this is, so that leads people to believe that there's a potentially lack of objectivity or bias, right? If you're told there's nothing in the line items that we could cut, but we oppose it.
Got it.
Right. And then,
But if I can respond to that, let that be stipulated.
okay.
It's a little bit more than that. What we did, and we're different than other Ways and Means. And if I can speak frankly, there has been a belief with Ways and Means and the Advisory Finance Committee that they're supposed to work together to make this thing happen. And we should work together to make this thing happen, but we should not be a rubber stamp. We're supposed to be an independent set of eyes that are looking at the budget and what makes sense. What we took a look at were educational value as an example. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. And over time, what are we doing? So if we keep doing the same thing over and over again and we're not getting results, then that's problematic. What some of the discussion around why the vote went the way it did, and I guess I was kind of surprised at that myself, is it came down to, for some, the default budget. We felt that it was because of the legal loopholing, and you look at the difference between the default and the proposed, you're not going to hurt. You're operating in the default right now, and you're not hurting. So we appreciate that. And, hurt is a relative thing, but that was the rationale behind it. So people can come up with whatever the reasons for justifying why people do what they do, but ask us.
Well, I guess I am. I guess, Dwayne, I'm asking.
And I just answered.
Because, there's also like additional, so for, in the educational outcome report in the beginning, it stated that, we recognize the standardized test is not the end all be all, and that
Right.
there are other factors. But I sat in a subcommittee meeting with a Ways and Means representative where high school plus one data was offered, and the representative, so this was in a student services subcommittee meeting, and the representative at that time said, "I'm not interested in that data. That's too far out." So that showed to me a lack of, well, then we're offering you data that is more in line with what you say is important data, and you're not accepting it. You know, you weren't at that meeting, Dwayne, so.
No, I wasn't.
I wasn't, I don't think Wayne or I either were aware of that
But-
at all. So whoever, I don't know what happened there, but we asked, I mean, you're a board member. And
Yeah.
that's a respectable position. I'm not meaning that,
Yeah.
but we asked in this forum, in this Ways and Means half hour time, the board, superintendent's office, what metrics do you use? And they said they use these test scores. And we said, well, anything else? I suggested like, student happiness, other metrics. No, that's what we use. Okay. So that was like months ago. So that we put that in and we go off and we, do oversight based on what we were told. But yeah, if there's more data out there, and I think we referred to some tonight in the math presentation, other, metrics that are measurable, and they also uncertainty, but like help complete the story. I think that's great. And I hope future Ways and Means groups can incorporate that data in reports. We can track this. I hope this is not a 1-year snapshot. I hope this is a methodology that can improve, and we can start getting a full picture so that as a community, we can see how we're doing and what's working, what's not working. And because I think we have a lot of good things in the school district. I don't think you should be afraid of data. I don't think you are, but I think there's a lot of good things going on in this district. Data can show us that we are in fact doing a good job here and there, and we need to work on this or that, and that's okay. But yeah, certainly, with that, we can talk offline and we can talk about how to include that in future versions or revisions, whatever needs to be done.
And I think it's worth mentioning before I get to Jeff, who's waiting, that we, as a board, we do have those metrics. They not having a binder of data to give you is certainly something we recognize now. So it's something that we are going to work on. We talked to Steve about it. Victoria and I had a meeting with him in our chair meeting Tuesday, I guess it was, or last week, whatever it was. We've talked about that, and it'd be something that we work on with Mike Berry, because it is, not having that handy to be able to give to you like that, is something that we recognize is that's not a flaw, but it's just it's a data point that we don't have. So it's something we'll work on.
Right.
I appreciate Dwayne saying that hurt is a relative term. Right, regarding that, how we've operated this year under default. But there were some unique circumstances that reduced the pain of a default significantly. And that was our actual health insurance came in well below the GMR. And that this year, our GMR is 4.1%. There's not room to go well below. So,
It was 10 last year, right?
yeah, I mean, it was, I think it was, so, yes, but the definition of hurt, we can talk about the flexibility we have and what we're doing. But just because we had some unique circumstances allowed the board to do some things. And also, there's some things if we go to default, that we're going to lose, a couple of thousand hours in support that I think find value. But anyway.
Jeff, you are a panelist. If you have your mic, you can come on.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks.
Hold on 1 second, Jeff. We just want to get the volume turned up. And you're good now, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And thanks for introducing the tax estimator as an estimator, because that's exactly what it is. So I appreciate you saying that. And I just wanted to echo what Dwayne, Greg, and Muzi were saying. And I do want to respond to the fact that the town and Sauhegan is on this thing. The main reason for that is to put the taxes into context. The original version of this thing just had ASD on it, and it went 1 year out. We showed it to some people, and it didn't mean anything to them. So you need to put the stuff in context. That's why Sauhegan's on there in the town, because people know they typically, last year they paid $10,000 in taxes. If you show them an estimator that estimates a $5,000 increase for ASD, that doesn't mean anything. So that's why the town and Sauhegan are on there. It's just to give context and for it to make sense for people. This is not a political tool. The school board should not respond to this thing as some kind of a negative entity. This is something for the taxpayers of this town to use however they want to. Some people are going to look at this thing and say, gee whiz, I want to support the schools because the taxes aren't going to be that bad after all, according to this thing anyway. The other thing, if so, he can finance, put an estimator on their website. I wouldn't look at it as this is going to be my tax bill for the next 5 years. That's silly. This is just an estimate. It's a ballpark. People should use it as they want to. It's just one more tool in the toolkit. One other thing I want to say about the facilities, Greg or Dwayne made a great point, or Muzi, about, you guys are estimating 25 years out for the bond. This is the same kind of a thing. We went 5 years out for context. You go 1 year out, people are looking at paying the bond, Article 12, $277 for the average homeowner. For all they know, that's the entire cost of the thing. People don't know. So you have to go out multiple years to give people a sense, okay, the estimate is to pay around $840 every year for the next 20 years, 25 years. That's the estimate right now. The other thing I didn't hear out of the facilities presentation, I've heard this 4 or 5 times, and Victoria does a great job with it, but she never mentions the fact, she doesn't throw the newest number in there. The average homeowner is going to pay about $21,000 over 25 years just to fund this thing, just to fund the new building. People need to hear that. They're not hearing that. So we're giving them, in my opinion, a fuller picture of what to expect down the road. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Go ahead, Dwayne.
I wanted to get back for a moment when you made the point that there were things that were off of what we were looking for, subject matter assessment, that would include the NEWA scores. The standardized testing, we can get that from the state. We got that from the state. We can go back as far as, and this is how we can tell how we've been performing over time. Okay. Not just since the pandemic, leading up to the pandemic, how we've come out of it. And we looked at other schools as well. We're in the business of delivering education. There should be no magic to that with respect to other schools. And that's why those comparisons are there. We also look for functional skills, social emotional well-being, and the other area was special services. What we got was the standardized test scores. This other bit that you're talking about, I'm very interested in that, and certainly would like to have that as well. So we are glad that you guys plan on, you're putting together more of the story and for the future. And we're glad that you guys are going to be working with Mike Berry to provide a more fuller picture as to who we are and what we do. Working also backwards, or in line with this, your response with respect to test scores, you said the board recognizes that state test scores do not meet our community standards. What are our community standards?
From the SAU.
This is the response. This is the response to our
So that was a piece that we had produced late last week, I think it was, early this week, just to provide further context. And, because we don't get that chance to, you have your reports, and obviously we just don't get the chance to have that communication. So we just had some items to provide further context. We obviously reviewed the reports factually, and they were posted, but obviously we have items that we disagree with. So this was, I think, our community standards are, yes, test scores need to be higher. I think we all agree that where they're not where the investment in this district is. We just wanted to make the point, I think, with that it's not the only metric that we want to look at. So I think that was where that was going, but we certainly recognize that, off the top of my head, I don't remember the number, 64% in reading was,
right.
It's not where we want to be. We want to see that to be higher, and ideally it will get higher, but that's a byproduct of everything else improving as well.
So I guess in time, and I don't know where we are on this idea of well, let me stick with that. The communities, when you say community standards, do you have any idea? You see where we are. We want to do better than that. Is there an objective? Is there a goal, or are we still working that?
I don't know. I don't think we formalized a goal, Dwayne, but I think that's something closer to where, Hollis, Brookline, Hanover at the top of the state. If we have, a budget that's high, if we have teachers that are, with high salaries, I think that it's only, we would expect the results to mirror that, but I don't want to speak for the board in general, but I think that nothing is too high, if you will.
Okay. You were gonna hit the button.
I guess I would say I'm more interested in looking at test scores with a constellation of other data points that, that we're going to be discussing and looking into. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in supporting educators in action research and really delivering research-based instruction. And to me, will really, test scores are likely to be a byproduct of, improvement test scores likely to be a byproduct of that. But we really want to, from my perspective, look at authentic assessments. And I think, we have to have that conversation. We haven't had that conversation just yet. We'll have Mike, hopefully coming in. We've appointed him anyhow, and hopefully on the 23rd, we'll make that official. And I've offline kind of talked to Mike a little bit about some of these ideas, and he has some ideas. I don't want to take his thunder. So he does have some thoughts as to what effective data points would be. So again, like Tom, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but so from my perspective is I don't want to just hang my hat on saying like, well, 85% would be community standard on a standardized test score. I think it needs to be in coordination with a whole bunch of other data points.
Okay. All right. The other thing we talked a moment in the hall, and I hope we get together and do that coffee. Okay, great. Then let's do that. The point being made, I'm concerned, and this is, if you have children in college or getting ready to go to college, or then this whole notion that test scores aren't necessary is false. And
yeah,
let me finish.
I just disagree, and I think we should have the coffee. I don't think we're going to agree.
Coffee, but let's take a look at what, because of COVID, many institutions have done a thing where they're looking just 1 year at a time, or maybe 2 years at a time. The reality is every one of them still assert that those standardized tests, SAT or ACT, are an indicator as to how well that student is going to perform in their institution. Not the only one.
Could you cite the source? Could you cite where you got that information from?
Well,
I would like to look it up, just if we're validating it.
Take a look at Harvard's, also Yale.
Look at what at Harvard or Yale. I just want to make sure.
Under admissions. And
Get your coffee, guys.
and a point is being made, and this is where we need to have that discussion at coffee. But when we're talking here, and Lisa is absolutely right. This is the Amherst School District. We're talking about colleges and universities. We should have that conversation, not here. Okay, so let's do the coffee thing. The last point that I wanted to make was there's a lot of discussion out there about the CPP, the dreaded CPP. And it's interesting because I went on ahead and dug up the latest state spreadsheet on the CPP. And there's this notion that says, state of New Hampshire says CPP is not a valid comparative tool. Okay. The note, it is appropriate to compare two districts only when they have the same grade range. Even when the grade ranges are identical, the only total figures should be considered comparable because different formulas may have been used to allocate district-wide cost. Total figure. Total is the all-in cost. What does it cost to educate a student? Some things in the CPP that are pulled out, bonds, for example, are pulled out. There may be some other things that are pulled out, but when you look at the total all-in cost, that's a realistic apples to apples comparison. So that's what I want to say on that. And, I may respond to some of this stuff. We can go back and forth, but, and this, that's all I want to say about it.
Thank you, Dwayne. We'll go to Mike is online. We just brought Mike in as a panelist. He had his hand raised. Thank you, Mike.
Am I ready to go?
You are.
Okay. So I want to go back to this notion of metrics, and I want to talk about our engagement with you folks this year, but I also want to rewind 10 years. When we first came to you folks, we said, we would like as many metrics as you can give us. What are you keeping track of in terms of measuring how our kids are doing? We expected that we would get metrics in 4 different areas. The first one was subject matter assessments. And that wasn't just ELA and math and standardized tests. We thought that we would get some metrics on how you guys are tracking how students are doing with science, social studies, languages, etc. You've talked a lot about looking at the whole student, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on functional skills like critical thinking, ability to work alone, ability to work by, on oneself, problem solving, communications, etc. We expected that we would see some number of metrics, qualitative and quantitative, covering how you guys assess how the kids are doing with functional skills and development. There's an awful lot of discussion about social emotional learning. So we expected that we would see some metrics about how you guys assess how kids in very difficult circumstances in the world around them are doing. And then finally, special services. We know that there are students who need some special help in certain areas, and we expected to see some metrics around how you folks assess how well you're supporting the various emotional and developmental needs of kids who have special needs. The only thing we got from you were the state scores that you're required to send to the state and NEWA data. And we found 1 year's worth of NEWA data. We asked you for more data. You gave us 4 years worth of data, pre-COVID through present. We got no metrics on any of these other things. And so I think it's quite, let me think of the right word to use here in public, audacious for you folks to be lecturing us that the only thing we used was standardized test scores when you had nothing else to give us. Now, let me go back almost 10 years. I would say, Tom, you just mentioned that this is not where you want to be. We actually think that not having metrics is a fundamental big issue in managing a school system. In April of 2013, when the SAU began doing strategic planning, one of the things that was supposed to happen was the development of metrics. April of 2013. And people said, Peter Warburton will do this, right? Which means that the boards were abdicating their responsibility for sorting this all out to Peter Warburton. It didn't happen. There was no strategic plan developed by the time Peter Warburton left. Then it was Adam Steele will do it. There are no metrics. There's no strategic plan. And now, to my horror, I'm hearing Mike Berry will do it. Mike Berry will not be successful as a superintendent, nor will our school systems be successful if we continue to repeat history this way. So I consider the fact that we only had 2 sets of standardized test scores to work with, and to be lectured by school board members about you shouldn't do only standardized test scores strikes me as, well, I won't say what it strikes me as. Thank you.
Well, I can assure you, Mike, that, hold on. There we go. I appreciate the thoughts there. We can't speak to what happened 10 years ago, but I can assure you that Mike Berry will not be alone in planning this. This will be an active board project to set this up, because we want this as much as anybody, I think, this entire, the entire picture. So it will not be a Mike Berry run show that we rely on for this.
Great.
Anything else, Dwayne?
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thank you. All right, so with that, I will move to our last topic of conversation for this evening before our public comment, and that is student board members. Hey, you want to have a student board member, show them the last couple meetings. meetings and we'll really get some volunteers come in, right?
Right. So, and that's part of it. So how this came up, and I think Fritz and I talked about this earlier in the year. So legislation have changed and required at the secondary level, school board, student representatives to the school board. I've had significant experience for 22 years having student representatives. No, I'm sorry. I've had so legislation change requiring student representation to boards. 22 years I worked with student representation to the boards. I found them enriching, interesting, and actually, depending on some iterations, actually getting some things done. This year, an organization helped the DOE write a technical advisory on how to do that, and I had a chance to consult with that because one of the students, an intern working on the technical advisory, was a student representative board at my former district. There is no requirement to have a middle school student rep, but I'd like the board to can think about it. And then, but how do you craft it in a way? Because you're right, it is. So it can be from 6 to 7, it can be just for the first hour and release. And that's what we do it at Sauhegan. There is a community council representative. They're working on a more formal student representative to please do. It's really bringing up now the requirements in the statute, which is just requires whole school election. But it is something I think, Terry talked about having, presentations, but I think it's a learning experience for typically it would be an 8th grader, and a connection between students and the board, and to get direct insight at certain things of kids. This came up in one of our mini meetings that Victoria and Tom and I had, and I talked about it. So, this time of year, it would be a May, June election and discussion. But I think it could be a worthwhile endeavor for some civic lesson and some connection. So really we just bring it up now to consider, it would be an election in the spring of returning 6, 7, the next year's rising, right? I think we call it the rising 6, 7, 8. And work with parents because it's different. High school kids, let's be honest, they drove home afterwards. And that's a little bit, but just something for the board to think about getting input. And maybe it's every other month. And Christy and I've talked about this. I've talked about it with Mount Vernon. It's just something that I think is worth consideration to get a student experience on both ends, learning for the kids and learning for us. Josh?
So I think it's a great idea. I will note the related policy as you guys think about this, is BBBF is the new student board member policy. You can potentially craft that and use that to guide a little bit. I think it would need to be modified for our purposes, but I think it would be a great way, again, to connect that link of what does school governance look like at Sauhegan, and how do you start to build that, through your ranks at AMS, and get some interested kids here who I think, provide perspective and have some learnings about how something like this operates. So yeah. I think it's great, and I won't be here to vote on it or do anything, but I fully support it moving forward.
You have a middle schooler.
I do, right.
Tonight, it's driving around time for the board interested, and Chris and I can work on some regs and some procedures involved, but just think about it. It's not obviously a decision tonight. It would be a decision in May.
Okay.
Cool beans?
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'll open it up for our last public comment of the evening. Terry, let me just check if Terry's hand's not raised. I want to make sure I wasn't looking at the right thing. So I'll open it up for our final public comment of the night. If you want to join us on Zoom, raise your hand, put your name in your avatar, and then turn on your camera when we get to you. For now, we will open it up in person, back with Miss Eastland.
Hi, Lisa Eastland, Amherst. So one comment, and I don't want to get into a tit for tat with Ways and Means, but I did mention, I think they are underestimating the power that they have when it comes to their opinions and what they put out to the voters, because when 1/3 of the town shows up at the voting booth, many have not been to deliberative. All they do is read the voter's guide. They see what Ways and Means is posting, and that's what they go on. So when you can say, oh, it's a data point, it's an estimator, people are smart enough to figure it out. They are smart enough, but not everybody puts in that amount of time. And so I think you're underestimating the power of what you say and what you put out there. So it has to be precise. The other question that I have is that I was told, and I didn't check the agenda because I didn't. So I'm asking, when is the alternatives to DARE programs going to be discussed at a board meeting? Because I was told it was going to be tonight.
It's going to be next week. It's the SAU meeting. It's on the SAU level meeting. And we only thought that because it involves the entire SAU. It involves all the districts. So we decided it made sense to do it for next week's meeting.
Well, that's all.
We'll record it for you though.
I know. All right.
Questions, but
Well, no, I just had some further, like, I just was going to make sure like whatever investigation you guys had done had kind of matched what I had in terms of cost and feasibility and all of that kind of stuff. So that was all.
yeah,
All right.
we'll have a presentation on it next week.
Thank
Sorry, Lisa.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comment online or in person? Seeing no hands raised in the building, seeing no hands raised online, I will close down public comment for the second time tonight. We do have a non-public session under non-public RSA 91A 3(2), and it will be subsections A and C, dealing with employee confidentiality, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Reputation and compensation.
Yes, thank you. So I will take a motion to go in non-public tonight.
I will make that motion.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second, starting a roll call vote with Terry, please.
Sorry, I have to unmute. Beam, yes.
White, yes.
Yes.
Greasy, yes.
And Gothier, yes, we are in non-public at 8:31 tonight. Thank you to Kristen and Kathleen for coming. Thank you for Ways and Means for coming. Again, Josh, thank you for your service the last 3 years, and Terry will wish you the best of luck on March 14th.